This was Being a Public Advocate at Home, a Nuts and Bolts in Service by the Public Theology Network of Province 5 of the Episcopal Church.
Jim Warnock is here, Father Jim Warnock. We have Robin Woodbury. We have Alan Yarborough and David Annis, along with Heather and I, who are part of the planning committee for the Province 5 Political Theology Network. And these are the folks who agreed to my extra meetings in order to hammer stuff out, and they put up with me quite a bit. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew they were here, and they put a lot of time in behind the scenes to help us get this stuff going. Alan Yarborough from the Office of General Government Relations is going to be talking to us about the OGR's approach to what needs to be in our COVID stimulus package, the one that Congress is currently debating. I think right now it's got a package on the table that has $908 billion. And they're still in negotiations about what all that entails. But Alan has 5 particular areas that he's going to talk about on behalf of OGR, and I'm going to turn it over to him in just a minute. One of the 5 is immigration, and since we are also lucky to have Adonis Flores with us, who is the chief immigration organizer for Michigan United, and he's going to talk specifically about the needs of the immigrant communities with respect to COVID relief. So Alan's going to talk about food security and SNAP. He's going to talk about funding state and local governments, and he's going to talk about the housing tsunami that is about to crash down on us as evictions skyrocket. He's also going to touch on our international concerns, but we're going to focus primarily on the 4 that I've mentioned. So without further ado, Alan, why don't you tell us what you know?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on a call.
Always a pleasure.
It's great to connect with you again. And advocacy can be tricky sometimes when it's a matter that is not that all issues aren't urgent in terms of our desire to want them to be resolved, but in the case of this with economic relief and healthcare relief related to the pandemic, it's even more urgent than usual. And over the course of the pandemic, the Episcopal Church's Office of Government Relations, has prioritized several issues among what could be dozens, and urging Congress to act quickly to address those issues through a relief package. We really need Congress to act sooner rather than later. Ideally they would have done this months ago to help our country make it through the moment of national trauma that we're in. And again, there are a lot of different angles to this, but we're really looking at legislation that could focus on urgent healthcare needs and in particular racial disparities as well, and then providing protections for essential workers and incarcerated people that are particularly vulnerable just in terms of the nature of the housing setup or the building setup. But beyond that, we wanted to highlight 5 major issues, one of which Adonis will go into in more detail, which I'm grateful for, but I'll briefly mention or talk through the other 4. And these will probably sound familiar to you all if you've been involved in advocacy with our office before. So the first is increasing food assistance and domestic food assistance. And specifically, we've been calling on Congress to increase the maximum Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefit. It's called SNAP. To increase that by 15% to ensure that low-income families have adequate access to the food that they need. That's a program that it's a proven program that shows positive effects for those that are enrolled from, of course, the direct benefit of alleviating food insecurity, but also to other aspects or dimensions of life, including school enrollment, educational development, and a lot more. So it's a program that does not, even under normal circumstances, doesn't cover all of the food needs for a family in a given month. Usually about 2/3 of the way through a month is when the SNAP benefits will run out, so to speak, in providing food assistance. But it's still it's critical, and so increasing that benefit can help alleviate domestic food insecurity. Apologies for the dog in the background. The next piece to highlight involves state and local government funding, which is a little bit of an odd one. I should have shared at the beginning that all of our advocacy is based in official Episcopal Church resolutions that come from General Convention and Executive Council, which are governing and legislative bodies of the church. And when it comes to state and local funding, there's nothing that explicitly directs us to encourage support for that. However, state and local governments support a lot of components of the social safety net in general. And so it's under that guise that we are encouraging federal support for state and local governments, because their budget shortfalls leave them at risk of not just laying off a lot of people, but not being able to support programs that people are relying on. So the pandemic has the potential, it is wreaking havoc on state budgets across the country, and we don't want those services to go away. And then it's also a matter that is of racial justice as well, and kind of perhaps an odd way. But many state and local governments actually employ a disproportionate number of non-white people. And so cuts or risks to employment in that sector would be disproportionately devastating to those particular populations. So that's why we've been pushing for state and local funding relief. The third piece of the 5 is housing assistance. I think that's something we're maybe all more familiar with than the first 2, but the economic fallout from COVID-19 has led to many families being unable to pay their rent or their mortgages in some cases. So while we applaud the CDC's decision to issue a moratorium on evictions, it's vital that Congress appropriate funds to ensure that renters can remain in their homes, but also that landlords can cover their expenses as they continue to provide stable housing for renters. We've seen some messaging out there that has ignored or sometimes downplays the role of landlords and their economic predicament in the moment as well, especially for those who are smaller property owners and aren't these enormous corporations, but for them as well. But for the smaller property owners that may have money tied up in assets, but they still depend on that income from rent to continue living, just as others do from other jobs. So we want to make sure to highlight that dynamic as well. Fourth, and briefly, we want to recognize both the United States leadership role internationally, but also our disproportionate level of influence that we have over other countries. And so we've been urging Congress to continue funding current international programs, and then specifically to provide $20 billion to support the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The secondary effects of the pandemic in many low-income countries have been particularly devastating, including risks of losing a lot of the gains that we've made over the past couple of decades in hunger and poverty reduction, and a resurgence of other diseases as healthcare systems are strained, healthcare resources are strained, and so this funding can help mitigate the impact of that and provide humanitarian assistance and urgent economic relief to vulnerable communities in other countries. As a global leader, we really think the U.S. government must work with other countries to defeat COVID-19. That does not, as we know, it doesn't know international borders. And so it's got to have a component of international agreement, cooperation, and funding as a part of it. And then the fifth piece, most briefly, because we'll hear about it in more detail in a moment, would be protection for immigrants. And the Episcopal Church has been pushing for protection for immigrants and their families in the wake of this pandemic. And for many of them, treatment, unfortunately, is out of reach due to cost and lack of access. And previous COVID response legislation that was passed excluded undocumented individuals. And so we want to make sure that Congress ensures access to testing, treatment, and paid medical and family leave, regardless of immigration status. So that's where we have been in terms of our Episcopal advocacy from the church-wide level. And I'll stop there for now. Thanks.
So thank you, Ellen. We've got the 5 areas of topics related to the COVID stimulus package. That's our focus for tonight's action, is to provide you all with talking points, regardless of the method that you choose to use to do this advocacy. So this first part is presenting the content of what you're going to say, and then we're going to talk some about the options that you have to do this work, and we'll provide you, with some resources to do that. So I'm going to turn to Adonis, who is under the weather this evening. And so we're going to let him go first in the event that he's ready to go lay down. So he didn't get a nap today, I'm sorry to hear, and I know he worked all day because I was on the phone with him several times. So there you are. And why don't you tell us about what we need to be talking about in terms of immigrant protection for COVID relief stimulus.
Thank you, Mother Marcia. So like you mentioned, like Alan mentioned, the previous COVID-19 relief packet excluded undocumented immigrants from any stimulus checks, despite the fact that undocumented immigrants do pay taxes and file their income taxes with individual taxpayer identification numbers. Even though they're not authorized to work in the country, they still file income taxes, and even though they don't have a social security number, our own government provides them with individual tax ID numbers so that they can still pay their taxes. So Uncle Sam does not care about your immigration status. When it comes to paying taxes, he will collect that money. And it's very unfortunate that that happened because a lot of our families are mixed status. Most of our families are mixed status. Somebody in the family is a U.S. citizen. Somebody in the family is undocumented. Somebody in the family has a green card or some other type of visa or DACA. And when the families that are most vulnerable get excluded, it undermines the entire efforts to overcome the pandemic. When we're leaving out a significant segment of the population from any relief, and they must work when they're sick to put food on the table, we're exposing everyone in the country, whether you're American or not. The virus will not care. So one of the things we're demanding is that in the next appropriations bill, Congress include real relief for families. Alan mentioned we need SNAP increases, we need housing assistance, we need stimulus checks, we need unemployment extensions. Our families, the things that our families need in order to come out of the pandemic. And very importantly, even though undocumented immigrants do not qualify for unemployment insurance, they do pay taxes, so they could qualify for tax stimulus checks. So one of the things we're demanding when we're making phone calls is to Congress, to senators, is to make sure that it includes relief for all families, including immigrant families. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a sample script. Oh, if you could enable my screen sharing. No screen sharing? Okay, I will read it.
You are now.
Oh, there you go.
It took me a second.
Thank you. Where are we? Okay. This is a sample script of how you can call. This is a Capitol switchboard. And we can add more talking points here, more things that we want included. I only included this because this is what I know that we were going to talk about today. But that included stimulus checks, housing relief, SNAP, and food assistance. And to be in the language we want to use is to be inclusive of all immigrant families, especially those who use individual tax identification numbers to file their income taxes.
That number is also called ITIN, capital ITIN,
yeah.
Just so you know.
So that when you call the congressional switchboard, it will ask you for your zip code, and with your zip code, it'll connect you to your, it will ask if you want to talk to your Congress rep or your senator, and it will connect you to whoever you asked. So then you can just say, hi, my name is Adonis, and I am calling from Detroit, Michigan. I would like to ask the Senator Peters, let's say they connect me with my senator, to include real COVID-19 relief for families in the appropriations bill. Our families need housing and food assistance, stimulus checks, and unemployment benefits until the virus is under control and we can go back to work. It is also imperative that we do not exclude any segment of the population, because when a group of people are excluded from pandemic relief, all efforts to overcome the pandemic are undermined. Everyone in America is exposed to COVID-19 if we force sick people to work in order to put food on the table. Immigrants are essential workers risking their life and health in order to lift our country out of the pandemic, and they should be included in all relief efforts regardless of immigration status. You can also use, what we also encourage is for you to add a personal story or testimony of why this is important to you. It's as simple as that. It's a 2 or 3 minute call. They keep a tally of how many calls they get. So the more people that call, the more pressure they feel to act. The other thing, and I did not mention this, but we could add, is COVID, detention centers and jails are basically COVID super spreaders. So this year, we were very fortunate to be able to lower the number of people, or demand that ICE lower the number of people that are in detention facilities. Anybody that is not that is not considered of danger is allowed to leave in their own recognizance. So most people in detention are there for traffic infractions or re-entering the country after being deported, or simply for overstaying a visa. One of the things is we want in the appropriations bill to make sure that they only fund detentions at the current levels that we have this year, not at previous levels like we did in 2019 and 2018 when they had records numbers of people in detention and in deportations. So by funding detention and deportation efforts at current levels, that means they're actually cutting the amount of money that they spent on detention centers and facilities. So that's another talking point that we could add to our calls. But right now, Pelosi and Schumer and even McConnell have agreed to include COVID relief in the appropriations bill that the current bill expires in December 11, this Friday. So they must pass something by Friday, even if it's just a continuing resolution. And then they really want to pass a long-term bill for appropriations that includes COVID-19. So that's where we're at. Any questions?
They have passed a 1 week extension, so it'll be a week from Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I had not heard that before we started. I have 2 comments to make about things to put in your correspondence, whatever that communication form is. Because they reduced the levels at the detention centers, they figured out a way to monitor people, by not keeping them detained. And so I don't see any reason why that can't continue if they already know how to do it. It saves money in the long run. And the other thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adonis, but when they were at those high capacity levels in 2018 and 19, in terms of the number of persons detained, they were very often living in horrible conditions, squalid conditions. And so there's no reason in the world to go back to that. So it's just, let's just use some common sense here, Congress. And, there's better ways for us to do this. So I'm throwing that out there. Anybody else have a question for Adonis? For me, it makes me very angry that we collect taxes from immigrants through their ITIN number, and then they can't get any COVID relief, even though they're contributing lots of money to the US coffers. I think I heard Adonis say at one point, it's around $10 billion a year, and that's not including undocumented workers. That includes documented workers. So in other words, in many respects, they're keeping Social Security afloat.
Yep. No, that was the opposite, Mother Marcia. That's only included undocumented workers. That's not.
Oh, that's only, okay. I'm sorry, I had that backwards. So say it again, just so that we have the right information.
Yeah, undocumented immigrants contribute over $10 billion in federal income taxes alone every year. And then on top of that, immigrants with work visas, green cards, and other type of legal status contribute even more.
Right.
So this is just the amount that undocumented immigrants
Right.
contribute. And they do not receive any benefits, like we mentioned.
Right. So when we hear politicians, particularly Republicans in this instance, say something like, well, all they do is come here and drain off of our, benefits, and they don't contribute, that's not true at all. And that's a good talking point when you're having a conversation with your representative. Okay. So, is that all you need right now, Adonis? Is that the time you need right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I mentioned earlier, the most effective way is to do those phone calls. You can also tweet at your Congress rep and senator. So you would just add and then put your message. Now, the only thing you got to keep in mind is it's got to be short. I think it's 240 characters. So you can use the hashtags COVID relief. You can use the hashtag pandemic relief, and also relief for families. Right. So there's but you can tweet at your Congress rep or senator. They also keep track of those, and it also impacts them because it's very public.
Right. We have I've assembled documents by state, by each state and province 5, and it has a list of your U.S. senators and then all of the representatives in the House of Representatives, all the Congress people in the House of Representatives. So, and in that information includes it many times their Twitter handle, emails, all kinds of information, phone numbers that you need to contact them. So I think that went out as an attachment. I forgot, Heather. Did that go out?
Sorry, which part?
Those lists of congressional reps that I sent.
They're in the toolbox on the website.
They're in the toolbox on the website. Thank you very much. So you can go there and click on your state, and you can get that stuff. Now, I just want to put a little caveat on there. Some of the people have since been changed office because this directory, I used the official Congress directory, and they only update it after the beginning of the next congressional term. So right now we're in 115, and then in January we flip over to 116. And then some point during that early part of the new session, they'll update their directory. So you want to be sure to double check, but that's a good working document. Okay, so now we're going to go to Alan. Where are you? There you are. Okay, what else did you want to share with us? Or are we ready to go into method?
I wanted to talk about the Episcopal Public Policy Network and the action alert that folks have, or the people can use.
Good.
So that'll transition a bit into method. Let me bring the link up though. So the 5 points that I mentioned that are in our advocacy, we for the COVID relief, we have included in this link here. So the Episcopal Public Policy Network, which some of you may already be a part of, is our grassroots, connecting network for Episcopal advocacy on U.S. federal level issues. And so we send out emails about once a week and post on social media for people to take action using essentially a form email. It's very easy on the user end to do this, and it's probably the most accessible, at least time-wise, one of the most accessible means of engaging in advocacy. These emails will get tallied by the office. They're not necessarily as personal. They're not don't involve some of the strategy that phone calls and social media campaigns can involve, but they can still be an effective sort of introductory way to get involved and make your voice heard on these issues. So I hope, if you take action with us, that you'll end up on our email list, or you can just sign up directly off of our website if you don't want to necessarily take action on this particular issue. But we have the explanation that I went through this evening on why we're asking for these things, and it includes links if you want to do more research. And then we have the pre-written email ready to go to your members of Congress, which you can edit and personalize if you wish. And we encourage you to do so. But it's super easy to use. I just wanted to give a brief plug for that. We cover dozens of different issues that the church has policy on. It's not just COVID relief, but this, of course, has taken up a lot of our focus recently because it touches on so many different areas, as you've heard already this evening.
Great. Okay, so I can't recommend EPPN enough, the Episcopal Public Policy Network. I rely on them heavily to send me alerts on our most pressing issues. And it's very easy. Typically, you just have to click a couple times, maybe type in your name or your zip code. But I highly endorse it and pass it on to your friends too. It's a marvelous resource, and we would all do well to use it to its full extent. Now we're going to talk a little bit about method. So let's see. With a show of hands, we got to put a couple people who are not on screen. But how many of us are extroverts? I don't know who else has got their hand up besides me and Heather.
And Marcia.
And Marcia, Deacon Marcia. Okay, there she is. Very good. Okay, so the rest of us are introverts. I raise that because it's important. And we all have our comfort zones. And some of us like, engaging in confrontation more than others. And, well, I can't say I love confrontation, but I am an extrovert. So I'm willing to speak and, stick my head out there sometimes, probably when I shouldn't. Anyway, so, but we have to find advocacy work that fits our personality style. I think that is very, very important. That's something that I'm writing about right now, because I think that when we find something that really works for us, we are much more effective and we can do it for a longer period of time. If we force ourselves to try and advocate in a way that doesn't feel comfortable to us, we'll either stop or we'll burn out. And this work is just exactly the kind of work that can burn you out. So it's really, really important. We were talking last week during our planning meeting, and we got some really good insights, particularly from Adonis and Alan, about the methods that are best for doing this kind of work, because we get this question a lot. Well, how do I do it? What do I do? Well, we know that emails are effective.
Oh no, I think Marcia first.
What? What happened?
I can hear you. I think it might have been just Heather.
Oh, okay. So we made a list of so we dealt with content. We got lots of actionable points to make when we contact our representatives. So we know we have good ideas of what to say. And incidentally, if you would like to bounce what you want to say off of me, you're more than welcome to do that. I'll be sure my email is in the chat box. I'm happy to help with this, especially, if it's your first time and you're feeling a little unsure of yourself. This can seem kind of intimidating. It doesn't have to be, but it certainly is understandable that it feels that way. So we made a list and we sort of prioritized the kinds of things that are most effective. And we came up with emails, help me with the order, people. I'm my list. I set it somewhere, of course. Emails, written correspondence and postcards, phone banking,
And
text.
social media.
Pardon?
And social media.
Texting and social media posting with hashtags like what Adonis was just talking about. When you tweet, it's important. Use your hashtags. If you're on Instagram, use hashtags. You can even use them in Facebook. So it's very important. And what's nice about texting or emailing is you can do that on the quiet, as it were. You don't have to necessarily have a live encounter with somebody, whether it's on Zoom or on the phone or someday in person. Okay? So don't be afraid to try out something that seems a little bit more remote, because these methods do work. And all of the elected officials have got a Twitter handle and obviously an email. Okay. And many of them have got a Facebook page.
The only thing I would like to flag, Mother Marcia, is because of the short deadline for the appropriations bill coming up, written correspondence might not be our best option.
Okay.
But phone calls, emails, and social media.
Social media. So there you go. If you don't want to do phone calls, if that feels a little bit too direct for you, do emails and social media. Okay. So you mentioned some hashtags, Adonis. Would you mind, anybody want to pipe in and mention? We'll put them in the chat box. The different, I'll be our recording secretary. I'm not going to put the hashtag in there. I'm just going to list the words that we can use as hashtags. We said families. What other hashtags did you mention?
It was relief for families.
Relief for families. Good. And these would be all one word too.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Is there a COVID? There's probably like a COVID relief.
I don't have any others than those two.
Okay. All right, but you get the idea. We can make it telegraphs these messages a great deal more when we use hashtags. And then there's another kind of training that we're going to offer. We're very excited about this. You're the first to hear about it. Mark it down, January 7th, next year, before the inauguration. We thought it would be very important to talk about how to meet with our representatives on Zoom or in person. Now, obviously, the in-person part won't happen for a bit, but we can request a Zoom meeting. The name of our session is Power Meetings for Episcopalians. And I saw this by Robin. Very good. So now, if you're not an Episcopalian, you can certainly come. And you can tell your friends to come, because we're an equal opportunity power meter. However, we all have a right to request meetings with our elected officials, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. And so our dear Adonis is going to do a training for us and tell us how to go about doing this. We're going to learn how to request the meeting, how to set it up, and then what to talk about. We're going to get talking points, and he advocates strongly for the sharing of personal stories. It's not always about facts and figures. It's about telling those compelling stories that get people thinking about their positions in a real way, a deep way. So that's coming up. Now, do people have specific questions about any of the methods that I've just mentioned, the emails? We're not going to worry about written correspondence and postcards for COVID relief, but it's a good thing. Phone banking, text banking, texting on your social media, and then we're going to deal with calling a legislative meeting with your respective representatives. Oh, and we have our script, and that's going to be provided to you. So, and you could feel free to take it, and it's going to be in electronic form, and you can modify it to your heart's content. And if there's stuff you want to add, go ahead and add it in there. It'll give you more confidence. Maybe even make bullet points in the middle of your document. Okay, now somebody please ask something. It's time for me to stop talking. Okay. Elliot, you got any questions?
Only where can you find a list of hashtags?
Oh, where can you find a list of hashtags? Anybody want to handle that one? What's a good way to find hashtags? Anybody know?
I've just seen them. I mean, I come across them being engaged in different advocacy campaigns, and usually they'll originate kind of from different groups, sometimes more organically than others. And so, I mean, in this case, the ones I have seen and I'm familiar with are the ones that are in the Zoom chat, the pandemic relief and relief for families. And then sometimes, like, I just use a term that may not even necessarily have a specific campaign behind it. So when I do posts about COVID-19, I usually do hashtag COVID-19, even though it's not a particular message. It's just sort of connecting it to other posts about that topic.
So relief for families and COVID-19 are your two top hashtags for this particular job we're working on. Okay, Elliot?
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm looking at my Twitter software. If you go in and start typing a new tweet, hashtag COVID, it pops up all the COVID hashtags for you.
Oh, okay. Are you on Twitter, Elliot?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so when you're at your homepage, you've got the search box, and you can go in there. And what did you type, Jim?
I just started typing a tweet. I had hashtag COVID. I got that far, and then it popped up COVID-19, COVIDiot, COVID-19 vaccine, COVID vaccine. So there's all kinds of COVID hashtags.
Okay.
Give them to you.
So that's your best bet, because that means people are already using them.
Yeah.
Yes, Marcia.
Tell me again the significance of the deadline December 11th. Is that when current relief runs out, or tell me again what that December 19 or 11 is about?
I believe that's when the continuing resolution ended, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah. So there are two ongoing conversations. One is in Congress. One has to do with COVID relief, and then one just has to do with funding the government, the regular appropriations process for funding the government. And because Congress has been for so long passing continuing resolutions or CRs, they reach this deadline more frequently than they should. And so December 11th is the day that the government would theoretically shut down if they did not pass some sort of legislation. They did just pass a week-long extension.
Is it for the 15th? Is that what you said?
I think it's just, I guess, 7 full days. I actually don't know.
7 full days. Okay.
Yeah, it's still it's the full time. Yeah.
Okay.
The new deadline might be December 18th.
18th.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, and by that day, Congress needs to pass a budget for the government, or else they're gonna shut down. There's gonna be a government shutdown. There's not gonna be any funding for a lot of government programs. And then what Pelosi and McConnell are trying to do is, instead of negotiating a separate bill for COVID relief and a bill for funding the government, they're trying to merge it all together. And I think it might be a strategy to make it easier for people that would normally oppose pandemic relief to support it.
The point is, we need to advocate quickly for relief to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're under the gun here, not just for COVID relief, but just in general for running the country. Now,
And some of the similar, there's a similar environment right now as there was in 2018 when there was a government shutdown between sessions of Congress.
mhm,
And that was essentially over the funding that was included in for building a wall along the
Yep.
southern U.S. border.
right.
So that still has been an underlying sticking point in these
Mm.
negotiations recently, especially from the perspective of Trump and the Trump administration, and
Right.
whether or not he would sign a bill that Congress passed.
Right.
So there's a dynamic of this now, not just gaining the support to pass it in Congress, but gaining enough support to pass it above the 2/3 majority that would be needed to overturn a presidential veto.
Right. There is a general feeling that there's enough votes to do a veto override. So that is some good news, assuming that those projections are correct. Okay. What else we got? How can we help you do this? What else can we do to help you all?
So the other thing is encouraging others to make phone calls and social media posts. So for example, after you do your own post, then you can make a separate post saying, it's your turn, call Congress, here's the phone number, here's what you can say. And then you can also create a post saying, help us tweet at Senator whoever or at Congress rep whoever, right? I do not know the list of all of your Congress reps or senators' social media handles, but for the most part, in Twitter, if you start typing at and then the name of your senator, it will show up and it'll have a check mark if it's the verified one. A lot of times they have one Twitter handle for their official business as rep, and other times they'll have another Twitter handle for when they're campaigning. But in either case, you'll be able to see. So for example, if I want to tweet at Senator Peters, I can just start typing on my Twitter at Peters, Senator Peters, and it'll show up his official one.
And that check mark is important when especially when you are sending to their official elected Twitter handle. It's really important.
Yeah.
So I just got something in the chat here from Elliot saying, compose some 140 character tweets for us. So very good. That's an excellent request, and we'll work on that. And if you would like to receive, or I'll just go ahead and send them out to this group that attended. We'll come up with a few, and you'll just have them. Does that sound okay? Good. All right. What else?
It's not quite the same thing, but in Indiana, the senators and Congress people often had their representatives they would announce that they'll be at the library at a certain time, and you just went and talk to them. Not the congressperson himself, or herself, but they're a couple
staff.
Of yeah, and that I did that several times. It's a real good way just to get their ear, and it's not intimidating because they're not the actual person. They're just they're mostly 20-year-olds, 20-something.
That's a really good idea. And you could do that on Zoom now. That would be that's how they're doing that now.
Yeah, I still got notes from Senator Brown in Indiana.
And you're in Seattle.
Yeah, well, close. Whatever. He wouldn't anyway, so.
So we are at 10 minutes to the hour, and we want to give everybody a chance to take advantage of getting nuts and bolts advice and help and make suggestions for others. But I'm not going to hold you to 7 just because that's what, because we have to. So if you think of something that would help you in your advocacy, send me an email. Is my email in there? I'm going to do it right now while I'm thinking about it.
If not, it should be on the page. It's in all the
Okay.
emails that I send to. I mean, that Marcia sends, since she signs them all.
Okay, there it is. So was this helpful? And just it won't hurt our feelings. Did we provide things that are going to help you or encourage you to get out there and do this?
And I typed in a sample tweet
I
of
was gonna
something,
say,
for
nice job
example.
there, Adonis. I actually jumped over to Twitter to see if I could find something that would show something, but
So this is really, let's just dissect this for a second. So he's got the handle on there. He doesn't go into, a lot of salutation and all that because we have to be brief in these Twitter. It's 240 characters, I think, is the limit. So he's got right up front are his hashtags, and then a little bit of text, and then more hashtags. And so this is a really good way to get your message out there on Twitter. That one is different than everything else because it is so abbreviated. So I'm going to pinch this one here that Adonis just wrote. Okay, very good.
okay, I did it. I totally went to Twitter. I totally posted to Gary Peters and Debbie Stabenow.
Yay!
Look at that. See how easy this is? This is what we do. We just sit around and think of things.
That's right. We had action even during our session. I'm so impressed. That's
we were
right.
laughing when we were doing the planning for this, right? Like Adonis is talking about phone calls, and Alan's like, "Oh, it's so hard to help Episcopalians make phone calls."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yes, but that's what we have to do. Like, it's so easy, friends. I didn't do anything before Trump was elected. No, I did. Do you know what I did before Trump was elected? EPPN would send me an email, and I would send it to my people. That was it. That's all I did ever." So, and it was super awesome because EPPN told me exactly what to say, right? So it's super easy. But once Trump got elected, I started showing up and I started making phone calls. And it's not that scary. You call and you get the same staff members over and over, and the ones that you agree with, you're just going to say, "Hey, I want you to know that, yes, I know that Stabenow and Peters are both like working for COVID relief right now. But my calling, as Adonis and I think Alan also said, right, they need to have our voices to put their little check, right? I'm just calling for a check mark. Yes, COVID relief, check, good. That's what I have to do. Or whatever the particular issue is, like that's what we have to do. For the people we don't agree with, we need to call and say, no, vote yes on this, even though you want to vote no or not show up or whatever it is that you're going to do. So I know that some people are phone averse, but it would be my encouragement. Province 5, we can do this. We can make the phone calls. We can be engaged in the process. And I found that once I started making those phone calls, I got to know who was answering the phone. So even the grumpy guy at my U.S. House of Representatives office, like, right, he didn't want to hear from me. Whatever, I would just call him to entertain myself. Sometimes I would also call a U.S. rep who wasn't my U.S. rep just to talk to his office and say, hey, thank you for the hard work. So give them a little cheer too. But yeah, so I just got to know them. I got to, so I would call, they would know who I was. And they, so with Peters's office and Stabenow's office, we joke and have a good time. And with Mike Bishop's office, we wouldn't. But with Alyssa Slotkin's office, we have a great time, right? So that was just my pep talk for we can make phone calls.
Yes, we can. We can.
And the other thing is you can also sign up to your senators and representatives newsletters. They normally send a newsletter every week. And in there, they can also tell you when they have the next public event. Right now, a lot of their public events are through Zoom because of COVID. but they'll send you a registration link. You'll register. You'll be able to make public comments. And that's another opportunity for you to mention these kinds of things in those town halls.
Excellent
Hopefully,
idea.
once we're out of COVID, we can have regular town halls where we can actually go in person and talk to them face to face. But through Zoom is another good alternative.
Excellent. So this will be our last presentation for 2020. I know we are all looking forward to seeing that 2020 in the rear view mirror. But we have a really good training to look forward to in January, where we learn how to have power meetings for Episcopalians. And I'm hoping to see you all, and be sure and grab your friends and have them join us. We'll have that registration information up soon when the newsletter comes out, New Year's.
Hopefully tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. I'm supposed to write that tomorrow.
Adonis is going to get me like 3 sentences of
Okay.
what he's going to cover, and then I'll be able to put that whole invitation together.
Outstanding. Okay, so anything else? So another person who's on our planning committee is Marlene Hogue. I see she's here with us. Hi, Marlene. Okay.
Hi, Marcia. Sorry, I'm sorry. I was so proud of myself. I did what Heather did. I sent tweets to my congressman, my 2 senators. Boom, 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 just like that.
Wow. How about that? All the way from a Boniface. Excellent. A benefice.
A benefice, yeah.
Right. Excellent. Okay. Anything else to add? I'm going to have Marlene, our deacon, dismiss us out. Heather?
I'll just do the wrap up. You will receive an email tomorrow. So hopefully it'll have everything you need for registering. They'll have the wrap up pieces from here, a link to the toolbox. That toolbox will continue to get updated as we continue to do our work together. I do want to point out at the bottom of the email that you got today and the one you'll get tomorrow will be some information about other networks in Province 5. And I do want to point out that there is a new one that will begin in January called the Suicide Prevention Network.
Excellent.
So, take a look at those. Don't spread yourself too thin, but if there are other pieces or colleagues that you know that are looking to get connected with other people doing the work that they're doing, that's what Province 5 is here for, to help you do the work that you're doing in your ministries, wherever that is.
Excellent. Excellent. You all are really essential to this work. I'm so impressed that you made the time to join us tonight, and I hope that it provided you with some good material. If you think of something that you need that we can help you with in your advocacy, please email me and we will get the issues situated, whatever it is. Okay? It's an honor to work with you all. So thank you very, very much. Marlene, you want to dismiss us?
I will. I'm going to say a little a concluding sentence too. So, glory to God, whose power working in us can do infinitely more than we can ask or imagine. Glory to him from generation to generation in the church and in Christ Jesus forever and ever. Amen. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thanks.
Thanks
be
be
to
to
God.
God.